Are you recording?
Welcome. Welcome to Dr. Ligers.
Welcome to the... Yeah. Should we do more of an intro to be like, we have an additional mic on this very special Celtic Ligers mini-series about Doctor Who.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks
And
good to be here.
Yeah.
Big fan of the show.
So I'm Gareth. Yeah. Yeah, and then everyone want to introduce themselves, not all at once.
In which order? Alphabetical or by rank?
Fuck. Actually, you rank Gareth. So next one, go Enda, go.
I'm Enda.
All right. Now, James.
And I'm Dr. Liger. No. I'm James. Welcome to the show.
Okay, cool. Welcome to the show. We're figuring it out what it is. We got an idea. It's going to be about Doctor Who. That's for fucking certain. We have...
That's locked in.
That is one thing that is not changing. Do we need any more introductions to people? Look, we're all adults here. We're all consenting adults. We just all want to hear a little bit of a talk about Doctor Who. And that's it.
It's what's called an episode 0.
Yeah, which James hates, but it's happening anyway, regardless.
But what it means is that the first episode of the new woker Doctor Who.
Yeah. Dr. Woke, they should call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hasn't come out yet, so we're doing what's called an episode 0.
Yes. To set up the premise of the show and to also that's basically it. It's to set up the premise of the show. And what we have is this amazing dynamic that's going to be happening. We've got 2 fans of the show, myself and Enda, and then James, who's kind of happy.
He doesn't like it.
Doesn't wish any harm on us for liking it, but kind of is not going to be watching it himself, I don't think.
Maybe. Anything can happen.
We'll see. If it gets really good. So yeah, for those who don't know, Doctor Who started out in the BBC from 1963 until was it 91, Enda?
1989, I believe, season 26.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just missing the 90s, yeah.
And for those who really do not know, Doctor Who is a long-running British sci-fi series following an alien time traveller known as the Doctor as he goes on various adventures with friends and companions throughout space and time. The Doctor is a Time Lord, an alien race who regenerate every cell in their body upon death, becoming an almost entirely different person. This has led to multiple incarnations of the same character over the past 60+ years. In each version, personalities and appearances may change, but the Doctor still retains a set of core values.
Yeah. And so then it was cancelled or put on a hiatus, and then there was a TV movie made by a Canadian company for American audiences in 1996.
Do you know why it stopped then?
Huh?
Do you know why it stopped then?
In 1989?
Yeah, because that's when history ended.
Yes.
So you know where to go.
Because this is also a politics podcast as well as... Yeah.
You know where to travel to.
Oh, yes!
Yes. Searing
Cooking
insight
now. Francis Fukuyama called it a day, and the TARDIS was like, all right, if you insist.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, then it comes back in 2003, 2005.
2005.
I'm not really good with dates. 2005. All right. I'm really good at dates. I'm just not good at years.
Yeah,
okay?
even them.
This is beyond the pale. We're gonna.
Yeah, sorry, edit that out. That's not. Well, the first episode when I came back was like, What If Mannequins Came Alive. Is it? Am I right with
Yeah.
that, haven't I?
Correct.
Which is the
Yes, you are.
idea like a child would have,
Yeah.
or an adult.
I
don't
think
know.
that they were like a fan. They were like a villain that was in like the Autons, that they were in the fucking Pertwee era.
John Pertwee played the third incarnation of the Doctor from 1970 to 1974. He had a head of white wavy hair and wore a velvet jacket with frilled shirts. Wikipedia describes him as a dapper man of action.
Am I wrong about that?
No, you're correct about that. Yeah, it was his first episode. Was a Spearhead from Space. That was the Autons. Yeah, and they kind of borrowed the iconography of that episode for the relaunch because I think it was one of those images that stayed in the popular consciousness. So Russell was probably like, "Oh yeah, we can recycle that."
And it's not like you can have like the Daleks back, like episode 1, or the Cybermen or something. You kind of got to like go for some, just like, hey, here's a familiar villain, but also you don't need to worry about them. Yeah, like they're not like, it is like little kid things, because a lot of the plots from Russell T Davies coming back were like, like that, like the idea of like, what if diet crazes got so mad that they took pills that made people waste away? Basically, it's like
It's like,
Goosebumps episodes.
What if you had homework that never ended? Things like that. Have they ever done one about pornography? Has there ever been a Doctor Who that tackled the thorny issue of pornography?
Well, there wasn't in the main show, but in something, I don't know sure if it's canon. It's called, one of his incarnations, Dr. Screw, okay? And they did talk about that.
But he loved it.
For some reason, they decided that he just wore like a trench coat in this iteration.
And nothing else.
And, and nothing. Yes, actually.
That's interesting because the clothes are often, signifiers of a particular mood, particular political mood.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So this was kind of saying at the time, full transparency.
Full frontal transparency.
Yeah. I tried to like look up to see what his costume looked like. I really wish I hadn't Googled this. Just really.
Was it English?
Yeah, he was English. I believe. I think he was.
So he just with like the reddest chest in the world.
Yes, actually, yes.
And his skin is like the same texture as the trench coat. Why is he wearing a full leather jumpsuit?
Yeah. So yeah, what's your deal, Enda? What are you about?
What a horrible question to ask someone.
What are you doing here? No, yeah, I am. Have. It's interesting to me, Gareth. Actually, I think when we first started talking about like this show, you kind of likened it to a curse almost, where it's kind of like you're like plagued with the knowledge and the kind of love that you have for this show. Because that's kind of where I'm at as well. Where, I think I started watching it in like 2006. I think it was The Idiot's Lantern. I think was my first episode. That's a Mark Gatiss episode from like.
I
season...
do not like that episode at all.
Yeah, it's not a good episode at all. That's the one where it's like the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, and there's an evil parasitic alien who's like stealing people's faces through the medium of television.
Yeah,
and it's like that was his
name's
great.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Anyway, you watched Idiot's Lantern.
Yes, and amazingly, I stuck around to watch the next episode after, which was the Impossible Planet Satan Pit 2-parter. That's where the introduction of the Ood, which is a good. It
is the introduction of the Ood, but I also do not like that episode either. Come to think of it, what did you think of it?
I liked it at the time. I actually watched it more recently on, I believe it was like I mean, through official means, of course. But I just to catch myself there. But what struck me about it was actually just like how it looked. Actually, I was like, oh my god, this looks like so like compared to now where everything is HD and 4K and everything. It looks so tawdry, like cheap almost. And at the time, to me, it looked like quite sleek, the show and stuff. But like looking at it, I was like, oh no, it's like 720p. Like it's just it's not we're not quite at that era yet. And it was like a base under siege type story, which is a kind of a common genre or setting or story type in Doctor Who as well, where they're stuck on some sort of enclosed, isolated setting, and there's an alien from the outside trying to get in, or they have to kind of run through a series of like always running down ventilation shafts or like down tunnels and things like that. It's very very alien.
Why do I like this shit? What the fuck? Yeah. Also, by the way, James, this is a two-parter where the Doctor beats the devil. So,
I
or was it the devil? But yes, it also kind of probably was the devil.
And there's the Ood. They're the ones who hold their brain in their hand.
Yes. And they got like tentacle mouths.
They're so innocent. They hold their brain in their hand.
Yeah.
Doesn't he?
I think that might have been in a different one, but I could be wrong.
I think that was the Planet of the Ood one. I think they do that though.
Yeah.
So what does the devil look like?
Looks like the devil, except he's like, you know, the way there's like the kind of the skinny devil who's got like, you know,
Skinny devil.
Yes. Do you know, like this kind of sleek, and they wear like a black suit, and they kind of like have like a beard, and maybe like, I'm trying to think of an example of the devil. This one is like the devil where they're actually like the size of a building and they have muscles and big horns.
Oh.
Yeah. So
what does he do?
He just kind of roars a lot and kind of possesses people. And the classic thing of that kind of Russell T Davies era of like, okay, we need some people to like. So yeah, you were saying it, Enda, that there's like a siege. It'll mean that there's a bunch of monsters chasing after the Doctor.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you know the way that they would do these things where the character will just repeat a line ominously, do you know?
Yes, so they would do that. I was sort of like, I feel like that's it was almost a very Moffat-y type thing that would be innovated later. But I'm trying to recall from that episode what that was. But I just remembered the character who would be possessed would get all of these like tribal tattoos on his skin and stuff, and like red glowing eyes, and he would speak like in a very deep voice. It was great.
Am I crazy, or were the tattoos sixes as well?
They were kind of like these sort of like glyphs, or like kind of like ancient like ruins. Ruins I think would be a good way to describe them. Yeah. And I think that was signify like, oh shit, he's possessed now. And I also, fun fact about that devil, the CG for that, I believe it was, looking at it even at the time, or like even like when I revisited the episode, I was like, oh, that must have blown a massive hole in the budget, and I think it kind of did, because I think the rest of the episodes after that are very like kind of cheap. Love and Monsters and Fear Her specifically.
Oh my goodness! That season is like full of duds. That is crazy. Wait, what's Fear Her? Actually, I think which one's Fear Her again? What's that about?
That's the one with the girl Chloe Webber, who is her drawings are like making people disappear.
I love that one. Yeah. I know people don't like it, but I actually do love that one. And it's set in like 2012 around the Olympics, and it has like one of the lamest endings ever.
Oh,
where,
it's
like,
so bad.
The Doctor takes the torch and like lights it. You know, it's so stupid. But the other one is famous, James. It's called Love and Monsters, because apparently they asked like they put it out as a competition on Blue Peter to like have some kid design the monster, and then they had this monster that was like played by Peter Kay and looked kind of like shit. What was the thing? What was it called again?
The Absorbaloff.
Yes, the Absorbaloff, and
remember him, yeah.
it's a famously terrible episode that everybody hates. Although it has some sort of charm to it, except the thing that I don't like about it is there's a kind of streak within Russell T Davies where he's kind of always we're just talking shop at this point where I'm just like, fuck, should I offer more context for who Russell T Davies is to the average listener? But basically, you know, there's like a producer brain which is like, okay, we got to make it for the kids. And so in this episode, they have like a Scooby-Doo chase scene through a hall, you know, where people are running through doors and then coming out of the other one. And do you know what I'm getting at? You know, where it's like the classic Scooby-Doo thing of like, there's somehow, for some fucking reason, like 6 doors on one side of the room and 6 doors on the other side of the room in perfect kind of just what the fuck symmetry. And you just, somebody runs into this door and then they run out of another door and no, they're and it's like, this is just so silly, but it's because he knew that like, oh no, it's gonna be like for the kids. But then bizarrely enough, this is a really stupid bit. I'll probably cut this out because it's just stupid. But basically, your man's got a girlfriend. I've only watched it the one time, so that's why I'm struggling to remember it. But I remember this bit because the Absorbaloff, whatever it's called, absorbs people into his body, and then obviously the Doctor defeats the monster, and then your man's girlfriend was absorbed into the monster. And so the Doctor's like, okay, I will take the essence or like, I don't know what you'd call it, of your girlfriend and put it into a stone slab. So there's like a pavement tile that has this guy's girlfriend's face on it and they start a relationship. And it's implied in the episode that the fucking piece of the pavement sucks him off.
Jesus.
Because the Doctor said he could do one last thing with his magic wand.
I can key into the absorption matrix and separate the last victim. It's too late for total reconstruction, but... Elton! Fetch a spade!
Even then, after all that, the Doctor saved me one last time. Here she is.
Could be worse. At least I'll never age. And it really is quite peaceful. You'd be surprised.
It's a relationship of sorts. We manage. We've even got a bit of a love life.
Oh, let's not go into that.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
I found a thing. So the monster is called Absorbaloff. And they had the original drawing. I guess you had to like draw the monster and send it in. It wasn't just you had to come up with the idea.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
What would you have drawn?
That's kind of cool, but
Enda.
What would I have drawn?
Yeah.
That's a good question because it's so funny. Like looking at that at the time, being like, I could have come up with something better than that 8-year-old could have. I wonder. Because I do remember that Blue Peter competition. I want to say one of the other entries, and I might be mistaken, was like a monster made of footballs, like soccer balls, I think.
Interesting.
And I'm kind of curious as to how that one would have.
Yeah.
That one would have like worked out. I think. I
gotta say about that original drawing. The original drawing looks much better than what they actually made on screen.
Yeah, the thing on screen is freaky. Also, I have a quote here by Russell T Davies about this episode.
Yeah.
And he said, it was a very experimental script. Not so experimental that people run away screaming, because you can experiment too much. But people will want a bit of a monster and a bit of a thrill. So it delivers a normal Doctor Who episode, but a little bit of a spin on it.
Okay. That means that he thinks it's shit, but he doesn't want to say it.
Yeah. Like, it sounds like it was just an episode of Doctor Who. I mean, an episode of a...
Yeah. Like, a bad one. Like, it is a bad episode of Doctor Who, and he's just like, you know what? We have like a monster in it. There's a few chases. The Doctor saves the day, and we're just doing something different this week. It's like this is fucking.
What would you have done, Gareth?
I'm much more comfortable sniping at people.
16 years of age, watching Blue Peter.
Yeah.
You get out the pen and paper. What sort of monster would you have drawn?
That's a much better question. What one would I have drawn? Because I would have taken the task seriously. And I would take it seriously now, but in a different way. But like back then I would have been like, well, he's got to be fucking evil. So he's going to have like red eyes, you know, that type of shit. So
Yeah.
what would I have done? I would say like it would actually be some sort of like Moffat type monster. So actually some of these people we should stop. I should probably explain very quickly that Russell T Davies, writer of Queer as Folk and It's a Sin, a number of other big dramas, years and years, was hired by the BBC to bring Doctor Who back. And so what you could kind of see when he brought back Doctor Who was the eras of the show that he would have watched. So it would have been like Peter Davison era. Who is he? He's the Sixth Doctor. Yeah? Fifth. Fuck.
The Fifth Doctor was younger than other versions of the character until that point and was around from 1981 to 1984. Boyish good looks and a sensitive nature, he wore cricket whites with a stalk of celery like a corsage. He was known for having a wide variety of companions.
So, yeah, and then also you mentioned something earlier, Enda, which I thought was interesting, which is you're like, wow, it actually looks like shit, even though I thought it looked pretty good. But like, eventually Russell T Davies left, and then one of the writers who would write an episode per season. His previous work would have been Coupling, and I think he wrote a mini series that was like called Hyde, and it was like an adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde with James Nesbitt playing Jekyll and Hyde. He also famously would go on to do Sherlock, which watching those shows, watching his era of the show with Doctor Who side by side with that, it was like they tend to bleed into each other quite a lot because his voice is very. He also he co-wrote the Tintin movie, and I was like, am I even going to be able to tell when Moffat has written something? And then at one point, Tintin says, "I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. What's the bad news? The bad news is we've only got one bullet left. What's the good news?" And he goes, "We've only got one bullet left." And I was like, I knew Moffat wrote that line instantly. That's the type of shit that he does. So like Moffat, his episodes would be like his most famous one is Blink, which introduced the Weeping Angels, which is like, what if you were outside and you know that statue that you little child over there that you're scared of? What if you blinked and then in that second that you blinked, the statue moved so quick that it killed you?
Yeah.
You know? So those are his type of ideas. Like or what's another good one? Oh yeah, I guess in his first episode that he wrote for Matt Smith.
Is he the one the baby with the gas mask one?
He did do that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you my mummy?
Are you my mummy? Yeah.
Mummy.
And that's also referencing what we were saying earlier. Is whenever he would write an episode, it would be like, I'll do this little twist on something, and then a character will ominously repeat the same line again and again. So first it was, "Are you my mummy?" for that one with the kid with the gas mask. What was the girl in the fireplace? Do you remember there was these not Renaissance. There was these French robots that looked like freaky kind of Louis the 13th type shit.
Yeah, they had like the masquerade kind of aesthetic going on. They were like clockwork robot, because I think they had like a ticking sound that would accompany them. Yeah.
But they also said,
"We did not have the parts."
Yeah.
And they would say that again and again. And then in the next one he did, which was Silence in the Library, and then What's the second half of that one?
Oh, Forest of the Dead?
Dead, yeah. So they go to a big library, and it turns out the shadows eat you. You can't step into the dark, otherwise you'll be eaten. You're like, okay.
And what do they say?
Thing. They say, hey, who turned out the lights?
Hey, who turned out the lights?
Oh.
Yeah.
I think I would have drawn. Have you ever read the dancing robot story? About a clockmaker who makes a dancing robot.
Yeah.
You know that one?
No.
Oh, I don't think I've heard that, Dan.
It's like there's a woman who loves dancing, and then she outdances all the men. So then this clockmaker makes her a dancing robot. And then it kills her by dancing too much.
Okay.
So
that's what your villain would be.
Yeah. And it would say, it would keep saying, I'm the robot who dances, or something like that. What would it say?
Yeah.
I can imagine a t-shirt.
I'm trying to think of something that's in everyday life that then, like a Moffat type idea where you'd be like...
just think of something you used to be scared of.
Okay, something I used to be scared of. Spiders. Still kind of don't like them, but I'm not scared of them in the same way. And what if it's like you turn into spiders.
That's turn into them.
Yeah, it makes you turn into a bunch of spiders.
And then what happens?
Do you need anything else to happen? The doctor runs down a corridor. He stops him somehow. Do you know?
Yeah.
So you mentioned, Enda, as well, that you started like watching it. I when I was in college, there was a girl who was I now realize probably hitting on me. Okay, and she was insistent that I watch Doctor Who because she liked Doctor Who, and I was incredibly sick, and like I had some stomach bug or something. And I just remember her like, give me your laptop there. I'm going to just transfer over all these episodes of Doctor Who. I'm actually not going to say, not because I just would feel bad. But anyway, she transferred all these episodes over, and then I remember that like I was incredibly sick, where I basically slept next to the toilet. Because it was that type of situation. And then I had nothing to do, so I decided I would start watching Doctor Who. So the first episode I watched was Rose, and I just watched them in the order that they were released. And I just remember being very feverish, and I really liked the episode Rose. I thought it was great. I think there's some sort of like arts and craftsy feeling to it that really resonates with me, and that's also a thing that because we were saying that the show looked quite bad, but then when Moffat took over, the show started to look like 10 times better. And now that like Russell T Davies has come back, it's surprised he's come back, the show is kind of like, it still looks good, but it really feels like that no, we needed to go back to looking rubbery. We needed to go back to not looking like this high-end prestige TV CGI. It needs to look kind of fake.
A bit grubby, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's that. I now think that when he brought it back, like, you go, oh no, it was the early 2000s. Most shows look like this. No, they didn't. They didn't have this like blown out yellow, orange lights on everything and kind of, you know, quite ropey CGI and very bad looking. They're charming. They're not like, I hate to say bad. I like seeing the kind of physical stuff, but it wasn't as good as other shows that were on TV at that point. But anyway, yeah. So
Don't know whether it was clear or not, but Gar was saying that the slightly gammy aesthetic of the show appeared to be an intentional callback to the Fifth Doctor Peter Davison, 1981 to 1984, because that would be the era which most landed with Davis.
Why are we talking about this at all, I guess? So wait, when did you watch your first episode of Doctor Who, James?
I think I was in college as well. And someone suggested I watch the David Tennant series. So the first one I remember watching is like, they go to a city and there's like a woman who's made out of skin.
Yes.
Now, you might say all women are made out of skin, but this one only had skin.
Yeah.
What
was the name of that one? Do you remember the name of that? I know what that's like the first episode of David Tennant's run.
Oh, New Earth.
Made out of skin.
Yeah.
What was it called?
New Earth.
That's
New
what
Earth.
I thought.
Yeah.
And what happened in
it? They go to a hospital, and it's like a space hospital, and then it turns out that this lady has a plot where she's like the last human lady, and she's just a sheet of skin stretched over a canvas, essentially. And she transfers her mind to the Doctor, and then she keeps bouncing between the Doctor and Rose. And there's some other plan where they're trying to... The reason it's like the best hospital in the galaxy is because they've got these poor unfortunates downstairs who they just injected with every virus imaginable.
Oh yeah, I remember that. And then just
Yeah.
To illustrate that, they just have loads of boils.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the solution was, I'm going to give them all of the cures in the galaxy. And I was like, I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, I think that
like
would
somebody's
also
got
kill them.
cancer, and it's like something in here's got to work, you know?
Yeah.
It's a very classic Russell T Davies resolution for sure.
Yeah. He gave them all the vaccines and they were cured of everything except autism, and that got a lot worse.
They also had a joke in it that was kind of later kind of seen as a bit transphobic as well, if I remember.
What did he say?
It was implying, it was kind of played for a laugh, where Cassandra is her name, and she says, when I was a little boy, and it's meant to be like, huh? And everybody's looking at each other like, what? But I think maybe we can... I think, speaking on behalf of the trans community, I think that we can forgive him for that one. So, like, yeah, just broad strokes for anybody who doesn't know. Like, Russell T Davies came back, made the show this kind of joyful Sunday night program where all the family can come around the thing, you know, that we all watch it on.
Yeah.
And then, but
The
he's
logo,
like,
the
you know,
boob tube.
but it's super campy, super over the top as well. There'd be like this big, like, soaring orchestral score for everything, and Kylie Minogue in a Christmas special. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to hand it over to Moffat. And then Moffat starts out, and it is a real gear shift, which is what I really enjoyed about the show, which is like, fuck, this thing can just reinvent itself. You know, it just became slightly different calibration. It felt different. It looked different. And there was these kind of like...
So what was his
you know,
first
everything
episode?
was
Moffat's first episode.
Was it Prisoner Zero? Is that the name of it?
That's the 11th hour with
the
Prisoner
11th
Zero.
Hour. I love the 11th Hour.
It's
Such
a good episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And it also, like, he seems to... The thing that's funny about him and Russell T Davies is that they seem to always be, like, bickering friends, you know? So in the first episode, in the 11th Hour, it feels like he's kind of having a go at him, because he just goes like, okay, my TARDIS isn't here, I don't have a sonic screwdriver, I need to save the planet, you know? But he makes a point of saying that a lot of the criticisms of Russell T Davies, like, he writes like a tremendous amount of episodes. You're like, fuck, how can somebody write that many? And the secret is a lot of them are pretty much the same. You know, the solution to each of them is that the Doctor uses a sonic screwdriver that creates a noise so loud that everyone has to cover their ears and it gives them time to run away or something. You know, there's always this sort of like solution there. But anyway, he had this kind of game plan set up where he's like, yeah, we're going to get darker and darker with this character and try to take it back to like 1970s Tom Baker.
Tom Baker played the fourth Doctor. He had the longest run as the character at 7 years, from 1974 to 1981. Easily the most iconic version with his mop of curly brown hair and trademark long scarves. He was silly, manic and intense, sharing much in common with the actor who played him.
And this was with Matt Smith, was it?
Yeah, Matt Smith, who was at the time was 26 years old, which is insane.
So Moffat's... So there was Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, and Moffat started with Matt Smith.
Exactly. And then...
AKA the Elephant Man.
AKA the Forehead Man. They had like, I think that Matt Smith's star started to rise and he started to be like, hey, fuck, I got some movie shit going on. So there's something that I heard that basically he left before they anticipated he would leave. And then they were like, fuck, we need a new guy in. And then, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Enda, but I heard that Moffat's Scottish, and he was essentially owed a favour by Peter Capaldi. And also Peter Capaldi kind of wanted to do it, but also like Peter Capaldi is a fan of Doctor Who, so he's like incredibly serious about the role and the responsibility. And also he's an old man, you know. He was like he was the same age as William Hartnell, who was the first Doctor, but like like William Hartnell was like what, like 50 something, and he just looked like 50 something back in 1963 is like you are in the grave. You're like you are fucking old as shit. So they got Peter Capaldi is like signing on then, and he's like, you know, I'm not a young man. If I'm coming onto this, I'm doing it on my terms. But like he came in and there's a very clear feeling that they're collaborating with each other to make Doctor Who this kind of dark fairy tale again. But the thing that I know,
with Matt Smith, though, maybe Ed, you might know. My sense of it was that around that time, Doctor Who got more popular in America.
Yes.
Wasn't there like a series of that that was like maybe it was shot in America or something like that?
Yeah.
I got sense that they were like, when it first came back, it was like, this is the British institution that everyone knows. And then when Matt Smith hit the ground, they were like, now it's sort of like, it's almost like Supernatural. You know that, remember that show?
Yes, I do, yeah. I think, you're not wrong. Like, I think there's always this part of British, you know, writers in the Anglosphere, for want of a better word, you know, in Ireland as well, where it's like, oh, we need to make it big in America. So I know that they brought it back, it's a British institution, but it did start to become like a big spectacle, and it started to air over in the United States. And then like I always associate Tumblr. There's like just so many GIFs of like David Tennant with kittens, and he took off in a big way. So I think it was inevitable that it was going in that direction. But you're absolutely right. When Matt Smith came, it was kind of almost, I think that the Americans responded to him a lot more initially. And then they were like, let's take advantage of this.
Matt Smith looked English. Like he wore the tweed and all the rest of it. So like when you see him, you're like, oh, this is an English thing. Whereas when you see like Christopher Eccleston, it's not really what Americans think of as being English.
No. It's a Christopher Eccleston, because when you see him in his leather jacket, which is not the best outfit, but he made it work for himself eventually. But like there is that feeling, you know, when like X-Men, they made an X-Men movie and they're like, Oh yeah, X-Men, yeah, and their big yellow and blue jumpsuits. No, these guys are going to have leather, you know. And then same with like the Matrix, like not the Matrix was adapted, but like everybody's wearing leather, and leather looks that's the vibe that I got with Christopher Eccleston. It's like if we're bringing it back, he's got to look cool. This isn't your granddad. So then when David Tennant took over, he had like, okay, we're going back. I got a pinstripe suit and I got this kind of trench coat, and then people were like, fuck yeah, like there's something like, and then he's traveling around with a phone box.
And the Converse were a big part.
And the Converse. But you have like this feeling like there is something British about it that appeals in America. And then I think that what happened in Matt Smith's run was that eventually the production values just switched so that people can go, I can actually be okay watching this show. Because previously, like I was saying, with those like big, you know, like kind of crummy CGI, bad makeup effects that are like actually deliberately so and charming in their own right would be off-putting to an American audience that's used to seeing more of the kind of prestige TV that they were seeing over there.
Yeah.
So you kind of see that the money, but they went and they made a massive push to get into the United States. And then in this season, yeah, you're right. They would go to America. They, you know, I think there's only like one shot.
That's when I gave up on it.
Yeah.
Because it sort of went into this realm of like loads of twists and a series arc that was very convoluted.
Exactly, yeah.
It felt like it was trying to be a bit more like hard science fiction. Slightly. Not actually, but like, you know, the skeleton in the astronaut suit.
Yeah.
Do you remember him?
No, that was it. There was an astronaut suit that was silenced in the library, but there is another Apollo astronaut suit that was like, that's another like Moffat thing as well. Hey, they're having a picnic in America, imagine, next to a lake, okay? And then it's like, what the fuck is an Apollo astronaut doing standing in the lake? And then they kill the doctor, which is also a Moffat loves. He's like, Doctor is mortal, the doctor can die. And it's like, shut the fuck up, you know? Like, nobody believes you. Stop talking.
He returns to that a lot in like Capaldi's era, where he does like the Doctor's last will and testament. He's like very concerned with like questions of his morality and stuff.
Yeah, and death and the kind of but also like.
So why is this era your favorite then?
It's funny. I quite liked. I did enjoy Matt Smith. As Gar said, it was kind of like a not course correction, but I kind of felt like the Russell T Davies era had really truly said all it needed to say.
Yes.
Which is very ironic considering it's come back.
Yeah.
But it sort of like said what it needed to do and then had the good grace to kind of expire basically. And then Moffat kind of took track and I think did make more of a deliberate pitch, I think, to a worldwide audience as well. I think when you mentioned Supernatural as well, a common sight in like Tumblr fandom certainly was the three-way kind of relationship between Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock. I think they call it Super Who-lock.
Yeah.
That was common. And I know Matt Smith's aesthetic especially was really geared towards like what were they called, like teaboos, like weeaboos, except for British things, I think.
Well, there's a hipster element to it as well, because he had like the fringe and he had like the I don't know, there's the boots, the Docs. Didn't they have Doc Martens?
Capaldi.
He was Boots, yeah.
No, not Capaldi. Capaldi then took over. That was one thing I was going to say, is that apparently he found out when he was filming like Three Musketeers, and so his hair was like short and kind of neat. And then they're like, "Can you come and work on Doctor Who?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure." So he comes back and like has the same haircut that he did in that. So like, it's this feeling of like, "Oh fuck, we really need to patch over this, figure this out." And then they have kind of this messy episode to kind of him just going, "Whoa, who am I? What's happening?" Because also Capaldi had already appeared in Doctor Who and Torchwood, which was one of the spin-offs of Doctor Who. So he'd appeared twice. And so they're trying to be like, oh, what am I trying to tell myself by appearing as a guy I've already met? And then they go, it was just a very messy episode, I remember. And that season is kind of like, they feel like Matt Smith episodes that have been repurposed, where it's like, I'm going to go back and do a rewrite and make this guy a bit more grouchy. But then...
What were they trying to do with him, with his character?
They were, like, one thing is that there was some rule introduced at some point where the Doctor only has 13 regenerations. So then Moffat was kind of sticking to that, where he's like, okay, he's reached the end of his 13 regenerations, so now what's going to happen? Oh, he's going to die, I guess. No, of course he isn't. So the Time Lords give him a bunch more regenerations. But my thought of it was, if he's starting a new regeneration cycle, they'll do it like William Hartnell. So it'll be like, since Matt Smith was like 26 years old, he was like a young man. The idea was that almost that the Doctor is aging backwards. You know, that was my theory anyway. So then when you start it again, we're going to have an old man who is similar to William Hartnell in that he's kind of curmudgeonly, he's a bit of an arsehole. And also like, but they made him too much of an arsehole in the first one. Because like, so, and apparently there's a scene, I mean, I'm not that familiar with the older episodes, but there is a scene in like the William Hartnell era of Doctor Who where they're walking through a jungle and there's like, it's a Dalek episode. And anyway, somebody is injured and is slowing them down. And the Doctor basically looks at a rock and contemplates bashing this guy's brains in because he's slowing them down, you know?
Do you know that episode? Enda.
I believe that's his very first episode, which is very funny to me. Yeah, it's an unearthly child where they go back to 100,000 BC or whenever, and yeah, it's like one of the cavemen is like injured or like is holding them back anyway, and the Doctor has this moment of like potentially like bashing his head in with the rock. And what's very funny is that moment, which is like kind of in a more metatextual sense clearly a result of them trying to figure out who this character should be and stuff. It's become like in spin-off material like a very like important moment where it's kind of like, oh, this is who the Doctor could have become before he settled on being the guy who saves everyone. Where it's kind of like that little flash of darkness that you get, which is like sort of iterated on in a lot of spin-off material, if I remember correctly.
But Moffat basically tries to do that again, because in like this in the first episode that he's back, like he basically leaves Clara to die. And then in the second episode that he's back, he's like, hey, you know, help me with this thing. And the guy's like, and I'll be okay if I do this. He's like, yeah. And then the guy does it and dies. And then he's like, you knew that he would die. He's like, yeah, but he was going to die anyway. So he's just being like really flippant about it. And I was like, oh, that's... Anyway, if there's any way to like burn through, like the American audiences would see, what the fuck? This young guy is turned into an old man and you're talking about all this lore and all this bullshit. And also he's an asshole old man, you know.
He also wears a hoodie, which I didn't
eventually,
like.
Yeah.
That's why I refuse to check back in.
Even worse than wearing a hoodie, because I actually liked the hoodie, or I thought it was fine. I was kind of, I didn't really care. But one of the things that happens is he doesn't have a sonic screwdriver for a while, so he gives himself sonic sunglasses.
Yeah.
So sonic screwdriver as well for, I don't know if anybody's listening who doesn't know the show a little bit, but it's kind of just the main tool of the Doctor, which is basically a screwdriver that over the years has become a magic wand. It can do fucking anything that it needs to do. Much to my chagrin, I like it when it's a screwdriver. I always loved that, because that was the thing that really appealed to me with that first Eccleston episode, where it like pulls out this thing. And then they go, what's that? It's like, it's a screwdriver. Like a screwdriver. They're looking at him like he's insane, you know? But he's like a pacifist. He's like, no, I'll figure out some other way. I won't kill everybody. Even though obviously he kills a lot of people quite often. But anyway, so yeah, Moffat had been in there for a very long time. And then you have Capaldi, and Capaldi is kind of getting an old man, but he kind of settles into the role, and they find their groove just in the last Capaldi season. And it's like now kind of, I think everybody had kind of checked out. They weren't really, I know I certainly was like, oh right, there's another season, oh god, I gotta do this.
So we're gonna go on to my personal favorite series next, with the companions. Like when you first clue in, it's like, you know, Billie Piper playing a normal woman. And then by the end, it's like a fat robot with no hair. And then you have what's her name?
Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically what ends up happening is you kind of, the ratings were low, everything is very dark, let's get a new guy in, he's going to reinvent the thing. And I mean, when the first trailer came out, it was like, huh?
Gender language, wrong gender.
Wait, who? What?
He said, let's get a new guy.
Oh. Did I say
New
guy?
girl.
I meant gal. Afraid. But like, so I just remember they were like, well, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Oh, Chris Chibnall is taking over. And immediately I was like, Chris Chibnall. That made me very uncomfortable because he had written quite a few bad episodes of Doctor Who, a lot more bad episodes of Torchwood. And then he also, he kind of had done, he'd done Broadchurch was another thing. He kind of did the, generic US knockoffs of, British knockoffs of US prestige TV. So Broadchurch is like basically Twin Peaks, but without all of the magic in it.
And what did you, when you saw Jodie Whittaker on the horizon, and what did you think?
I was very excited.
Same, yeah.
I remember the leading rumor was that it was going to be like another like bloke in the role, and I was just thinking like, oh, this is going to be just such an uninspired era, and I was already part of the joy / despair of being a Doctor Who fan is that you have to say goodbye to your favorite era and like watch it die in front of you and then be replaced by something else. But when and like yourself, Gareth, when I heard Chibnall was taking over, I was like, okay, unlike Moffat, he doesn't have a great track record of episodes, but I guess he's the only writer who was also a showrunner, so I guess that does qualify him for the position. But when Jodie Whittaker was announced, her having been in Broadchurch, I was like, oh, that's very unexpected, and that's actually quite a pleasant surprise, because even as far back as, I believe as Matt Smith, when he came on, there was like discussion of like a woman taking the role, and I was very excited to see that it was her. It was like this certain, it felt like if he had wanted to put his stamp on the program right there and then, that was it. And all he needed to do was just ride that wave of goodwill with like, good competent episodes, and maybe even occasionally muster up a really great episode, and we'd be golden. But that's unfortunately not what happened.
He's not a very inspired man. He's not a very he's a very boring individual, it turns out. But when Jodie Whittaker, so when Jodie Whittaker was announced, I was like trying to find every single podcast that was talking about it or speculating about it. I just had so much energy thinking about, God, I cannot wait to see Jodie Whittaker in this role, because I fucking love Jodie Whittaker. And I also love that she's from the north in England, So you have so then another thing that kind of tends to happen is that Russell T Davies is from Wales. So the production moved to Cardiff. And so there's a lot of Welsh actors in it, and there would be for the rest of the run, but Stephen Moffat's from Scotland, and then you'd have a lot of Scottish actors and a lot of Scottish people appearing in it, like Amy Pond and obviously Capaldi himself. And so when they decided we're going to have Jodie Whittaker, then it moved to Sheffield. So so. And then the companions started to appear. They were going, we're going to have 3 companions, and they're going to be a diverse range of people. And I was like, okay, cool, this works, this is great.
But not in the way you're thinking. I love these companions, and I watched a few of these at Garrett's house when they came out. And who were they again?
There was, and this is so embarrassing. This goes to show. I can't even remember the black guy's name.
It really feels like you know the way
Ryan.
Say when Men in Black International got released, and there was a woman in it, and they were like, "Oh, it's gone woke." but it's really just that there's a woman in it. I really do feel like with Jodie Whittaker, whoever was writing it was like, this needs to be woke. Am I right there?
I would agree. In the sense of like that it was like definitely geared more towards like racially diverse casting and like a more of a commitment to just even on an aesthetic level, just like more inclusive in roles, and even in the writing as well. I do believe they had some people of color working on the scripts and stuff, which that was a marked improvement from Moffat's era. I would say there was a bit more diversity in the writing staff, but it was kind of an odd mix because on the one hand you had the sort of the woke presentation, and on the other hand you had scripts that were more geared towards like kind of a traditionalism, like a kind of back to basics approach. And those kind of two things, one is kind of very forward looking, the other one's kind of backwards looking, and I always found that kind of combination very interesting, and also one that might go to some length to explain maybe this sort of fractured critical or fan reception to that era, where it is kind of like people who watch the show for, you know, maybe like the inclusivity and more dynamic and diverse stories might be put off by the more like back to basics, like, oh, we're going to do this like the Three Companions thing is such a tell because that's what they did in the 80s, so we're going to go back to those kind of stories. And then you have the more traditionalist fans who are very upset that a woman has taken the role. And now there's people of color in the parts as well, so it was always going to be, I think, kind of a mixed bag. But
even his
era, I know there are people who
when you're saying there about like we brought up like Tumblr before, but let's say like Russell T Davies, right? Oh, here it is, it's coming back, it's going to be this super exciting, oh, I can't wait for you to see this, and we're going to talk about some politics and the issues of the day. It's like, you know, any sort of long-standing soap opera where they talk about the issues that we're talking about around the kitchen table, but in a sci-fi slant. And then you have Moffat, and it's like, oh, well, I have my favorite era of Doctor Who, and I want to be creepy and kind of gothic horror. And then there's nothing that you could say really about Jodie Whittaker's one, except that Chibnall is entirely reactive. You know, he's like,
yes,
okay, so what's happening on the social media? Okay, cool. Well, you say you want diversity. Well, here it is. Okay, you say that you, you know, and then so you know, what can we do? Let's have Nikola Tesla appear. Hey, you like him? You like your bacon as well? You like, you know? And then there's like, but everything else is just a blind panic. He doesn't seem to be able to keep up with the schedule. Yeah,
that's what I mean by woke. It's like, it's obviously good that there's diversity, but it's like, yeah, it's reactionary, you know, in a weird way.
Because like as the show goes on and his era goes on and there's more negative reaction, then they start to, like, there was one point where he said like, yeah, no, I'm not really into the Daleks. I wouldn't really bring them back because, like, you know, what is there to say? And then all of a sudden, the kind of everything starts tanking, and then it's like, hey, here are the Daleks. You love the Daleks? It'd be shit like that. There'd be like really reactive.
The Rosa Parks episode.
Yeah.
Where it's like this space neo-Nazi goes back in time to stop Rosa Parks getting on the bus. Because, you know, if she didn't get on that very bus, history would have been different. Ignoring that there was like, you know, there was a, you know, there was a
other boycotts and project. There was a civil rights movement. It wasn't defined by one.
Yeah. And then the sort of resolution to that one is like, we must just hold space to watch history happen. It's almost, it's like we see her, we hear her, and we're here to support her, you know?
But the original remit of the show apparently was like, okay, we have this spot between like young people's show and kind of, I don't know, a primetime like news sort of show. So like, how do we bridge that gap? Well, let's do something that the family can watch, all right? And then they would be like, okay, it has to have an educational remit, so it has to have a historical thing. That's where the time travel came in. And initially they didn't want like monsters and aliens and all that shit, but then obviously that didn't last. But there seems to be an element of it where Chibnall is being like, well, let's go back to these difficult historical moments and kind of address them and talk about them and blah, blah, blah. But then also it's there's a lot of America focus on it. Like, it's not like he went back to a pivotal moment in, racial politics in the UK.
It wasn't
that maybe
like,
people,
what's his name? The fellow we were talking about him on the podcast recently. He was the mentor to Jeffrey Donaldson.
Oh, Enoch
Powell, yeah.
Yeah, they're not dealing with Enoch Powell.
No, exactly. I mean, and also like it is very, if you're on the internet and then like it's very internet 2014 basically, where people are sort of like, everyone is American who, if they exist online, they're thinking about everything that's going on in America. And so it's like, all right, let's put that into our show. Whereas, but there was actually an episode which dealt with the partition of Pakistan. So, and it wasn't very well received, but it was the closest one that I saw to, well, that's kind of interesting. That's cool, do you know? But
I like the companions being the cop, the guy who's afraid of ladders. I couldn't believe that when I first saw. It's like he's afraid to go upstairs because it's too high, and then just an old man.
But they'd also forget that that was his thing. Every now and again, there'd be like chase sequences. He'd be like leaping across cliffs, and and then every so often they'd be like, oh, I can't ride this bike. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot that he had dyspraxia. And then like another thing they mentioned, the cop is a very fucking important thing, because the idea of having, so you have, the doctor travels around in a police box, okay? And now you have a cop in there. Not only a cop, but like a woman of color who is abused, like it's said in the thing that she's bullied by the people in her workforce. And then they have an episode with the neo-Nazi, and then Ryan has to like wrestle with the fact like, oh fuck, like this horrible racism that I've had to endure in this place. This place is terrible. And then Yaz, who's the cop, is basically like, hey, it's not all bad, do you know? I can't even remember what the conversation they had was, but it's like there's so many elements there that you're like, wow, that's interesting. What are you going to do with it? And then he does nothing with it. And that's the thing that was most aggravating.
Thank God my nan taught me how to keep my temper. Never give them the excuse.
Yeah. My dad tells me the same.
Yeah, see? It's not like Rosa Parks wipes out racism from the world forever. Otherwise, how come I get stopped way more by the police than my white mates?
Oi, not this police.
Tell me you don't get hassled.
Of course I do. Especially on the job. I get called a packy when I'm sorting out a domestic, or a terrorist on the way home from the mosque.
Yeah, exactly.
But they don't win, those people. I can be a police officer now because people like Rosa Parks fought those battles for me. For us. And in 53 years, I'll have a black president as leader. Who knows where they'll be 50 years after that? But that's proper change.
So, yeah, up to Jodie Whittaker, and then I think that he's just a bad writer. He's a bad manager of all this stuff. Who knows whether it's just like it sounds like an incredibly hard job. Where I've read like a lot of I've read this book with Russell T Davies talking about his process and what the thing was like, and it sounds like absolute hell. It sounds like he's doing like the work of about 10 people, but he could manage that. But it seems that Moffat could manage it as well. But it seems that Chibnall could not handle it. And I know from somebody who worked on the show that they would be like waiting ages to get scripts. Everything would be kind of half finished, cobbled together. And so if you're ever watching the show and being like, well, what? Like Arachnids in the UK is a good example where it's like, oh, we let all the spiders down into a safe. And you're like, well, what happened to those spiders in the safe? Wouldn't they just suffocate to death? And it's like, doesn't matter. I'm already moving on to the, like things like that, which Russell T Davies would be like, no, we can't leave that out there because people are going to be wondering, well, you can't, like, what happened to the bad guy? What happened to this person who appeared in the story and their fate was left kind of unclear? Like Chibnall would just be like, I don't have time. And so the episodes would just keep going on in this big fucking mess. I think Jodie Whittaker's character, her version of the Doctor, never really solidified. And then, yeah, they're like, okay, the 60th anniversaries. Yeah.
Why did it only last a season?
No, it didn't last. It lasted about 4 seasons.
Did it?
Yeah. How many seasons was it?
For 4 years.
There was 2 proper seasons and then the Flux miniseries.
Yeah.
And then a series of specials towards the end. So I think all in all it was around I think it was like 4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
From 2018 to 2022.
And the Flux, man. Fucking hell.
What was the Flux bit?
It was a weird he was trying something.
Explain this one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it was very weird because it was meant to be, I think, just a salvaged version of what would have been, I guess, series 13, I think, where it would have probably brought a lot of the story arc to its proper conclusion, Jodie Whittaker's story arc, but COVID happened and resulted in having to necessitate COVID filming restrictions and everything, and a lot of the scripts had to be, I believe, redone. The majority of them were by Chibnall, I think, bar 1 or 2 where he had a co-writer on, but it does show in the final product where there's like a million subplots happening all at once, and
very uneven. Yeah, it's
very.
But like, it was meant to be like, hey, this is going to be a new thing. We'll have 6 episodes that are just going to be the same story, okay? And it'll be about this galaxy-ending event called the Flux. And then so the Flux happened, and basically the result of it is how much of the universe was destroyed? And do you remember?
It's a big number.
It was
I want to say like 70% or something.
Yeah. So James, the Doctor did save the day in the end, but 70% of the universe was destroyed. Okay.
Okay.
And everything kind of just goes back to normal. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, and then there's like a series of specials where everybody's just like kind of like whatever. I guess 70% of the universe, like they don't even mention it. It doesn't really come back or anything. And
so is it like 70% of the beings in the universe die, or is it like
yes,
the universe is 70% smaller?
70% smaller. So yes, yeah,
okay,
yeah. So anyway,
because when Gallifrey goes when it's locked behind the time.
Yes.
Lock.
Yeah.
That gets brought up a lot. And that's just one planet. I know Doctor Who is from there, but...
Oh, yeah, the Time War, yeah. So Gallifrey gets destroyed in the Time War, and also that's kind of very, post-invasion of Iraq, where you're just like, we've got to talk about planet, war and stuff.
And there's a lot of repercussions. So that'd be 7 trillion times that. Gets wiped out. I was didn't really affect anything.
It was crazy. It was crazy. So what ends up happening in the series is in the doldrums, people are like, this fucking sucks. I hate this. I'm like, I hate this. And then they go, okay, Chibnall's leaving, Whittaker's leaving. And you're like, okay, thank God. Like, what is the show even going to look like? Who's coming in to step in? Like, who's the successor to Chibnall? And they're like, guess what? Russell T Davies is coming back. And I was like, filled with dread, but also hope, where you're just oh thank God, that sounds like a safe pair of hands. But I was like, I want a new pair of hands. I don't want to fuck the same fucking guy. But then I kind of comforted myself by going, okay, well maybe he's in the intervening years, as a lot has happened to him, and he made it to sin, and he's gonna come back at it with a more seasoned approach. And then they're like, and now David Tennant is coming back as well. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of happy about this, but also again, it's the same fucking guy. And then it also during the Whittaker years, the guy who had done the music since they'd come back, so in 2005 when they came back, they had Murray Gold, who did those soaring orchestral scores. And then for Whittaker's run, they replaced him with some other guy, I can't remember his name, but he was doing more like contemporary sounding stuff. There was an element of like, now correct me if I'm wrong as well, Enda, but there was an element of like dub to the intro.
Yes.
In the Whitaker era, like this kind of big drop and very, I don't know, I was like happy to hear a different sounding kind of music, and they're like, great news everybody, Murray Gold is back, and I was like, fuck this, we're just going back, we're just gonna do it again. But I was, and
they brought back thingy as well.
Who?
Catherine Tate.
They brought her back as well for the specials, yeah. And
so they're sort of just like all your favorite things. Forget about the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. And then they go, and guess what? We're going into partnership with Disney. And then this is kind of the origin for this show, because all of the stuff that I saw online was people going, they're going to have so much more money when they're owned by Disney. It's just like, there was one tweet that I saw, which I've not been able to find since, but what they said was, they described this as the Tory approach to everything. Run a public service into the ground and then insist that the private sector is the only thing which can save it. so it's like, let's get... Yeah.
This makes you and then Disney adults.
But even then, also to bring it back to the America thing, like one of the reasons... So there was a recent article from Deadline. Deadline, Hollywood. No, where is this? Headline reads, if it'll fucking... Doctor Who showrunner says Disney Plus deal had to happen as the demise of the BBC is undoubtedly on its way. Okay. So here he is speaking on a podcast. They've quoted him here. He said, I had already said in interviews that I think Doctor Who will have to become a co-production. There's no way the BBC is going to fund that. You've also got to look in the long term at the end of the BBC, which is somehow surely undoubtedly on its way in some shape or form. What is Doctor Who going to do then? You have to prepare for that. But in this article, it says that one of the conditions that Davies had for coming back was, where is it? A Davies set condition before he rejoined for a second stint as showrunner, that it was that the show will launch simultaneously on the BBC and Disney Plus in May. Okay, so I'm just talking about this thing of like courting the Americans again. This is like Russell T Davies, like, we're going to go fucking hard at the Americans again this time. It's on Disney Plus. It's going to be launched there, so they get to see it at 7 p.m. on Disney Plus, whereas here it'll be released on the BBC player at midnight.
How did you feel about this Enda? This whole Disney taking it over?
It was kind of like confusion and like a bit of trepidation. I was like, I can't say I was like, I think I can't say I was excited. I think I was sort of like, there was an odd sense of reassurance where I was like, okay, so the show will probably like actually outlast the BBC, which is also like sort of like good if you're a fan of the show. Is also like, as Gareth kind of pointed out, quite depressing to kind of consider that that's a possibility, because I think the health of the BBC and Doctor Who have kind of been inextricably linked, I think, to how the political situation has been there. Because I know the Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, Russell T Davies era 1 was kind of like, to me, it will always be enshrined in kind of like New Labour era. Yeah. In fact, like that comes to an end in 2010, both of them, the Russell T Davies 1 era and New Labour. And then over that decade, you just have like Tory austerity and just the BBC just having its wings clipped like and more to where it is just like a kind of a voice for the government now, for the Tory government. And there's like
episodes that are critical of austerity as well, do you know?
Yes, yeah. There would be episodes where... Sorry, James, go on.
No, go on, Anna.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, there are episodes like that, like, that do critique, say, even Capaldi's finale. There's quite a good scene where Bill is, like, wandering through a hospital filled with, like, proto-Cybermen, and one of them is like typing out the word pain on a kind of text-to-speech function thing, and the nurse comes over and plugs out the device, so just to shut the Cyberman up. And it's like very upsetting, but it's like also very grim in a way where it's like, oh, it's like, it feels like it's kind of grasping at a critique of like the hospital system, the healthcare system, and the state of it. And and like all the cutbacks and how it's been like left to die basically. Like it has those kind of like little flourishes there, even in the absolute like doldrums of like 20, well, that was 2017 or whenever that episode was made. But and then in Chibnall's era, they shy away from that a little bit more.
It's basically
with the exception of
Clinton, we should be at brunch now type stuff. It's like,
yes,
you know,
very
it's
much
great.
So.
You know the way like Hillary Clinton would be like, yeah, like I love Martin Luther King. He's fucking really something, you know. And then they'll find a picture of her like marching against Martin Luther King when she was like 6 years old or something, you know, like stuff like that. There's like this kind of like everything is just aesthetic. So there's a famous episode that's basically about space Amazon, where it just shies away from any critique of Amazon and goes, hey, some things are good and some things are bad, but who knows? You're like, okay. And then there's another episode where they have like a Theresa May stand-in. This is after George Floyd was murdered.
Okay.
Am I right about that, Enda? You tell me. But like, they have a Theresa May stand-in who gets the Daleks to basically be the London Met.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like,
Jesus.
that's what do you? That's a very evocative image. You know, what are you going to say with that? And then it just devolves into, well, no, the Daleks' latest scheme, and it's like, but like the opening scene is the Daleks disrupting a peaceful protest. But yeah, the other thing about that was of note, I don't know if I mentioned this already on the podcast, but was that over the summer 2023 there was the writers' strike, and Russell T Davies was out on the picket, and they were going, yeah, we gotta fucking get those Hollywood fat cats to start listening. And then on the November 27th, 2023, after the strike was resolved, Doctor Who shakes up writers' payment structure after Disney Plus boards sci-fi series. The series, which is currently celebrating 60th anniversary, sources said that the episodic writers are now being paid a large fee up front rather than a small fee plus residuals that has seen previous scribes earn additional compensation when Doctor Who is repeated, which is actually one of the things that the strike was explicitly about, was residuals. Mm-hmm. So, like, as well as being like a writer and then a kind of like activist, he'll go up and he'll say things that are broadly positive. He is also a producer, which means that he is a money guy. So some of the stuff that he's doing to, you know, protect Doctor Who make me very, you know, it results in compromises like this, but also like makes you very nervous that you're like, well, yeah, maybe if it's like, you see what Disney did to something like Star Wars, for example, and then you also see his stamp just being, this is the way the show is going to look forever now, which is, again, the thing that I liked about it before was that it just could become something radically different very suddenly. But anyway, they also have now this season that's going to be released is going to be season 1.
Oh, right, okay.
So for the Americans, because they get confused otherwise.
Are they going to start as like regeneration cycle off again?
No, I don't think so.
It's an odd like rebranding thing, yeah, where it's just like there's just now 3 distinct years of the show, the classic show, New Who, and then the Disney Plus era.
Yeah,
it's caused a lot of consternation in the fandom. They're like, what you mean I can't call it Series 14? Which is, I understand that. I think it's like, it's nice to have an unbroken kind of the row of series for sure.
Which is why I've always called Series 1 of the Davies era Series 31. I don't know if this is Series 30. I don't know how many seasons there were before. There was like something, it was 30s anyway, it was up there.
So now the new guy is Shudigawa.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're both very angry about this.
No, I'm really excited. I really like, the other thing that, like, again, to go back to my point about the anxiety of like Russell T Davies kind of just holding on to the show for dear life, you have this feeling that he's like was watching all the seasons like Moffat and especially Chibnall and going no, and just getting angrier and angrier, and so now he's so there's like, how many episodes is there in this one? It's like 10, is there? Or like 7
I think
8.
8,
Yeah.
possibly even less. Yeah.
And he's written like 6 of the 8 episodes.
Yes.
And the other episode is
majority.
one of the other episodes is written by fucking Moffat. And then there's one episode written by a new writer, one singular episode. So me and Enda were talking about, we were like, I can't wait to see the Doctor not written in Russell T Davies' voice, because maybe Ncuti Gatwa kind of settle into this role. And then it's like, we're not going to even get the fucking opportunity. Like,
Yeah, it's going to be a very like not to say that Ncuti Gatwa will bring his own flair, his own like ideas to the table. I'm absolutely sure he will, and based on his performance in the Christmas special, I think that's a given. But it would be nice to see less of a writer voice maybe in the portrayal, and see like what it's always good to see what the actor does between different episodes written by different writers, to see what's brought between those episodes, what's brought between those portrayals, and what isn't. And I mean, on the one hand, that probably allows for like consistent characterization, but on the other hand, it is nice to see like, oh, the Doctor's doing something in a different context and it's written by a different person. So this is kind of interesting. And it's probably interesting for the actor too to like get outside his comfort zone as well.
I mean, even when you think about previous actors and the way they responded to it, I mean, like Tennant and Davies seem to be very close with each other. So I think that was probably just organically between them. But like when you have, when I saw it with Moffat, sometimes with Smith, apparently with Matt Smith, his first costume, he looked like Jack Sparrow. So I think he said he stepped up on stage and he looked miserable, and they were like, all right, you kind of do your own thing. So he's like, oh, I was doing research then. I saw Patrick Troughton.
Patrick Troughton played the second Doctor from 1966 to 1969. He wore a bow tie and baggy trousers with suspenders. His personality could be described as goofy but concealing a darker side. He was known for playing the recorder from time to time.
And his like kind of jacket and bow tie, I was like, can we go back to that but make it more updated a bit? And then anyway, so that's the kind of dialogue, that the discussion that he's having with it, or how he would play it. Or one of the things that they said for his first season was that he was meant to be like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. So you definitely get that energy from him in the early season. But anyway, with Capaldi and Moffat, you definitely felt like they were like in discussion and maybe disagreeing with each other, and he's like, I want to do this, and well, how do we do this, and how do we incorporate this? And like one of the things I heard is that he didn't want to take off his wedding ring, so they gave him a bunch more rings, so he just wears a bunch of rings. Like again, that thing about the hoodie being like a costume that a lot more people can afford. And then he wrote an amazing letter about Heaven Sent, like the anniversary of Heaven Sent. Do you remember that one? Did you ever see that?
Which one was that?
Which one's the one?
I haven't seen the letter.
Right, yeah. Let me try and find it real quick. It's just interesting because you'll watch like, you know, TV, like they say, like anything. You kind of just take it for granted. There's a number of episodes of this TV show, okay? But then a show like Doctor Who, it's like, this is like an hour of television, you know? And this is like a movie, you know? So it just, you sign on for a project and you're like, okay, I trust the people I'm working with, or who's directors, my actors, the writers, everything. And we're all trying to achieve some sort of goal, I guess, you know? But anyway, I just found it interesting for an episode of television that Capaldi spoke, if I can just find the fucking thing, it's very eloquently about his experience and all the people and thanking them and just being like, you know, talking about the legacy of the episode and stuff like this.
Do you have any predictions now, Enda, for this season?
For this season, I am quite curious because I've seen there have been like leaks, I think, of varying authenticity. I won't go into them just for if anyone's conscious
no.
of spoilers. I can't even remember most of them, but it appears to be taking kind of the same shape as like a standard issue Russell T Davies season, where you have your opening episode, and then you might have the kind of wacky offbeat one somewhere down the line, and then the more serious one, and then you have the 2-part finale, which has kind of been a mainstay of the series, I think, since it came back, give or take 1 or 2 exceptions. And I think he's kind of adhering to that structure, I think, more broadly. I'm very curious to see what the distinctions are like between sort of RTD1 and RTD2, and like how can we organize those and distinguish those. In terms of predictions, I would be surprised if we didn't see like the return of an old enemy at the end of this series, because that's what Russell did a lot in this first era. Was like, he brought back the Daleks, and the Cybermen, he brought back the Master, he brought back Davros. There's very few like villains, I say, of that caliber, where it's kind of drawing on sort of a shared cultural memory of like, oh, wasn't this guy very scary, like a recurring villain of that stature. It's very hard to pull one of those back. He kind of did for the third special, The Giggle, where he brought back the Toy Maker, but he had only appeared ever in 1 episode, and it was more building on that and the sort of
the other thing, the Toy Maker was called the Celestial Toy Maker, and Celestial used to mean basically Asian, basically like saying Oriental Toy Maker.
Yeah,
and
it was very racist. Yeah,
such a weird phrase. Yeah, they used to call it the Celestial Empire.
So he removed that from it, and then also he what was it? So originally the Toy Maker was actually dressed in like kind of like like I don't know better word for a Chinese garb, like that type of thing. And so they
have the ponytail. Do they have the hair?
I think he did, actually. Now that you mention it,
I think he did, honestly.
Yeah, but he played by a white guy, obviously. He was played by Batman's butler from the 1980s Batman movie. But
Alfred.
They got Neil Patrick Harris to play him in the updated version. I thought the performance was, I didn't really like it, to be honest. And also another example of them courting Americans. They're like, let's get a big American guy in here. There's a big attempt to make sure that like the Americans know that we're here and you can watch us and it's a great show. You like your Marvel shows? Well, this is kind of like that a little bit.
I was actually thinking of, who was the guy, and they got one of the old doctors to play him. Then they could bring someone else back as a character.
Yeah.
The curator.
Yeah. Tom Baker brought back as the curator. He's amazing. I love the curator.
What do you think of these like 50th reunion, 60th reunion specials?
I really like them. I think there's a certain discourse, I think, in like, I know in fandom circles about like what constitutes a good anniversary, whether it's like bringing back all the things you recognize or just having a good story, because I do think it's kind of hard. I won't say it's impossible, but I would say it's hard to do one without doing the while also simultaneously doing the other. I thought Moffat found a good balance with his 50th anniversary. I love Day of the Doctor, honestly. When Power of the Doctor, which was the Jodie Whittaker's last episode, which had a lot of cameos from past Doctors, when that finished, all I could think of was, God, Day of the Doctor is actually just risen in my estimation, because like Moffat focused on writing the story first as opposed to like a cavalcade of fan servicey kind of cameos and stuff. And I will give it to Russell T Davies for his specials, where his second special, Wild Blue Yonder, which ended up just being like a two-hander between David Tennant and Catherine Tate on a spaceship, was kept like very very quiet, like what exactly was going to happen, and that led people ran rampant with speculation saying, "Oh, Matt Smith's going to come back, Capaldi's going to come back," and I just remember thinking at the time, like, you guys are just setting yourself up for disappointment, because I don't think that's what we're getting. And instead, we got like I really liked that episode, and to be honest, I just rather a good firing on all cylinders type episode than anything specific that would like dredge up like memories of the past. I would like the show to kind of I don't mind the show looking back. I kind of prefer to look forward, I think. And I thought the 60th and the 50th did a good on balance, like a good job of that, especially because the 60th would do things like, oh, we're going to adapt in the first special an old comic book story from the 70s, and then you have something new and different in the second one, and the third one we're bringing back an old villain, and in addition to, of course, David Tennant and Catherine Tate being back as well. So it was like, kind of pulling from...
With that third one as well, it was also like the start of television, just because they had like, oh, it's the first film thing for television, so linking it back there. Yeah.
Exactly, of reaching really far back into the past for that one, and then doing a multi-Doctor story in a kind of like turned on its head kind of way by bringing in Ncuti Gatwa and David Tennant together in the last couple of scenes there. I think your mileage may vary on how successful that was, but like I did appreciate the swing, if nothing else.
The idea behind it is more interesting than the execution. But like, it's like, what if we did, like you're saying, like a crossover Doctor episode, but with a future Doctor? Wow, crazy. But then they have him in there, and then like a pet peeve of mine, and maybe I've mentioned this already, was like Davies is trying to be more sensitive. Like there's a bit of there's a kind of thing where it's like Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. I'm kind of having two thoughts wrestling to, but one of the things is having, hey, here's David Tennant again to wash the taste of the lady Doctor out of your mouth, and don't worry, we'll ease you into the idea of a black gay Doctor by having him hang out with your favorite again. You're like, that's a bit uncomfortable for me. But then the other thing was, he goes, we're trying to be, so Jodie Whittaker comes out, she regenerates, and then she regenerates, and her clothes fucking regenerate as well. And it used to be a sort of, I would have considered a sort of a bit of a rite of passage, at least in the new era, to be wearing the clothes of your predecessor as you kind of come into your own. And I like that, but he's like, no, because that would be really offensive to have somebody in women's, like this man in women's clothes would be like, we're making fun of drag, which was interesting, but whatever, I'm going into that bit. But then when they do this thing, the contrivance that they have, so that Ncuti Gatwa and David Tennant share the same screen, and instead of it being regeneration, it's bi-generation. So he splits off into two different Doctors, which annoyed me because I like rules and stuff. It just felt like such a kind of like, oh yeah, who cares? Just get them on the same screen, bi-generation, whatever, you know? Like, I didn't think it was a new thing. I thought it was just some like lazy thing that he did, which he's not above doing. But anyhow, Ncuti Gatwa appears, and then they have to split off the current Doctor's clothes into two pairs. So I guess David Tennant gets the jeans, and then Ncuti Gatwa basically just gets a shirt, and he's running around in his underwear the whole time and acting really camp. And I was just like, how is that not more offensive than the weird thing that you said about not wanting to have a man in drag, you know? And then I said as well, when we were talking about it, like what you're hearing is kind of like David Tennant's Doctor speaking with through Ncuti Gatwa, but with a few more babes thrown in. So he'll just say like, don't do that, babes. And you're like, I'm going to need something more. And we've yet to see whether Ncuti will be able to talk with the guy who's making the show as much as some of the predecessors were. You know, I hope so. But like a lot of this Marvel stuff as well is like we get like young people or like new directors, and then we just know that they'll be more pliable, that they won't push back on any of this stuff. So I don't think that's an unfair thing to bring up because the show has joined Disney, because that's what it is with like Star Wars and the Marvel stuff, which is all on Disney. They have this kind of set way of making things. Now, we just have to wait and see what happens. We've seen what some of the episodes are going to be. But yeah, I will say to his credit as well, though, that, you know, bringing up stuff like the Star Wars shows and the MCU stuff, like they're like, oh yeah, we've got a bunch of diversity, and we look at that. There's a gay guy in the background. He's waving at you. Do you know, like, and like, or
that they're going to head out anyway.
Yeah, here's two people holding hands, but luckily we'll crop in when we go to Saudi to try and sell the film. Do you know, or for international markets. But like Russell T Davies is like, no, this is going to be front and center. It is going to be impossible for you to edit this shit out. This is going to be a massively gay show, and that's a great thing. It was interesting reading the book because, like, this is him answering questions in 2010, and you know, there's a bit more flamboyancy in Doctor Who back then, and then they introduced the character of Captain Jack, which John Barrowman actually kind of, like, initially Captain Jack seems that he's kind of like a suave American spy, essentially. Like almost like a James Bond type thing. I know James Bond isn't American, but you get me anyway. Whereas, and then over time he becomes like, you know, basically was a pansexual, but very like campy as well. And that became an integral part of the show. But in this book, back in 2010, Russell T Davies is saying that people are complaining about it. They're like, yeah, he made Doctor Who gay. He made it gay. And he's like, I fucking barely did anything. But now he's like, no, I am making it gay. This is going to be a gay show now. Like, there's going to be like, what was the one? Fucking, oh yeah, Jinx Monsoon. You know, you got Neil Patrick Harris, big gay actor, Ncuti Gatwa, gay man, unavoidably camp as well. And then you have Jinx Monsoon, drag queen, playing a villain in an episode where they meet the Beatles. And we all know how gay the Beatles are. No, I don't know why I brought that up. But it was just like, I just thought it was funny that they're meeting the Beatles. But anyway, yeah, it's just going to be like a big out and proud show. There's also an interesting thing where he was given out about Loki, which is a Marvel series about, you know, Loki from the Thor movies. And Loki is like, in one episode, just goes, oh, I'm bi. And then they go, whoa, this is great. Look at that. We got a bi character. And Russell T Davies is like, I didn't fucking, you know, make all of these gay shows for you to just slide back into the closet. Do you know what I mean? Like, he thought, like, I'm putting out these things and making these little advancements. And now you're talking about, like, this guy saying he's bi as if it's a big fucking, you know, it's some sort of progress. And Kate Herron, who wrote the show, I don't know if she directed any episodes, but she was like, yeah, that was the best I could do. Anyway, now Kate Herron is writing one of the episodes for the new series of Doctor Who. So looking forward to that one quite a lot, honestly, because I liked Loki as well.
I quite enjoyed Loki. Yeah, the first season anyway. I can't speak for the second. I haven't seen it. Second
one is a fucking mess, but it like sticks the landing quite well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I have some time for the second one. I just remember like watching episode of the second one, just going fucking getting more and more angry at these kind of squandered opportunities, and then just at the end, like I was just like zeroed in on these last 3 episodes, and I was like, fuck, this is actually pretty good. So yeah, I like Loki. Kate Herron wasn't involved for season 2 of Loki, which probably goes to show why it was a little messy. But anyway, I getting sidetracked. I think it should be interesting. I think it's relevant to talk about it. It's just something that I'm into anyway. But also, like, as a show, it is like something that is like running alongside society. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's about the issues of the day. It's about the styles of the day. It says a lot about like culture, sometimes politics, but then also TV. Like, and Russell T Davies is like a guy who is educated in TV. So you have like the first season of his first run where it's like, this is like the 70s. It's going to be like on Sunday nights. It's going to be appointment viewing. And now you have him like coming back and like what's happened in TV. He's like, we're going to get a bunch of the streaming stars to come on. We're going to change the way that we put this out. It'll be like streaming on the services. and it still has the same kind of old school qualities, but you do really see like he's seen what's happening and is now incorporating that into it, what the show is about. So I think that'll be fascinating, and I'm looking forward to it, because I know that once we watch an episode, we'll be like just going like, oh fucking hell, this happened, this happened, this happened. But also like the fact that he's saying this, what it says about like the current, like the fact that when he was doing the show originally, it'd be like kind of like, oh, we can't make this too gay, and we can imply this with this character. And I think I've mentioned it to you before, James, but like what would happen a lot, especially in the Moffat era, would be like, let's say Bill was his companion and she was gay, but like they would never say I am gay. It would be like, you know what, you should get yourself a lovely boyfriend. I'm not actually into boys, like, and it'd be like always heavily implied.
Very cute, yeah.
But now the landscape would just be just like, oh yeah, no, you just meet up with your same-sex partner or whatever the fuck. All the shit that the kids are up to. But anyway, you'd meet up with them, and it wouldn't even be worth mentioning. You know what I mean? It's not worth commenting upon. Although there's some stuff with like disability and trans. Well, I don't know why I put them together, but like there's some really ham-fisted stuff about disability in it, where they go like, hey, we have like a ramp into the TARDIS, but it's like a fold-out ramp that you have to physically put out. And then, I don't know, I just remember seeing that, and I was just like, you could just put down the ramp and it wouldn't have been a thing. He's like, hey, look at our ramp, Like, there's a lot of Russell T Davies inserting this stuff and looking for credit. Let's say that,
Yeah, patting himself on the back.
Yeah, and he has a very arrogant personality, for sure. And I love him, but, like, yeah, there's a lot of him believing his own bullshit.
Yes.
So... yeah, I'm looking forward to this version of the show, but I do think that he's like, it's hard to say whether he's priming the ground for what comes next, as in like, but it is very much his decision who the next person is going to be as well. So, yeah,
that's something I thought about a lot as well. Is like, what comes after this? As well, because I'm like, does Stephen Moffat take over again? Like, what's going on? Do we just repeat?
Imagine.
And I do think he's getting the pump primed, I think, for like as you said, kind of establishing the new, this is how we do things now, compared to like in 2005, where it was very much like post Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we're doing arcs now, we're going to like make it look modern and everything, and now it's like being very much made with this sort of streaming audience in mind. But thankfully, still, one thing I will say I am grateful that they did keep was that just keeping the weekly release, because that is something that I'm not a fan of like streaming platforms doing, is releasing all the episodes at once, because like it just, that's how you keep momentum going, that's how you keep interest going and stuff, and I am glad to see that they've kept that. One thing I will say, I would be surprised if he doesn't do, considering his interests and the Disney Plus deal and interest in camp and everything related to that, I'd be very surprised if there wasn't a Doctor Who Muppets crossover of some sort happening, because that's owned by Disney as well. I was like, I think he could, if anyone were to make it happen, it would be him. But that'd be fun though.
There's definitely be more some spin-off series as well. They'd probably be happy to have that, depending on how this goes, because he's always a mad one for the spin-offs too. Another thing you were mentioning there about TV of that era, was that trauma was a big thing. We always have to have trauma in this show. The Doctor is so traumatized by Gallifrey and its destruction, and we come back to that again and again, and how depressed he is. And now in the new season, in the specials, pretty much immediately they were like, all right, David Tennant, we're parking you here, you're going to take a break, and then like Shudigawa, I'm going to go off and have a bunch of fun. They were very much acknowledging the fact that we're gonna get over the idea of like dark, brooding characters. This is going to be a fun, mad show now, and get used to seeing a lot of color. We're going to see so much color. We're going to have loads of fucking music in it as well. Some of it's quite bad, but still, there was a musical number in the Christmas special. Now they're going to have like an entire musical episode set at Abbey Road. So, that's interesting. But yeah, like the comparison I made to the MCU there, that is an anxiety of mine that Russell T Davies is going to be like what Disney was to the MCU and Star Wars. Russell T Davies is going to be like that to Doctor Who within Disney, which is ironic.
Yes.
But it's this thing of just like, no. Doctor Who is this way. It has this music. It has these things. And it can't not have these things. And, you know, we need to find the person who's going to take over the show. It's going to be through my production company and also co-producing with Disney. And, again, removing it from, like, the idea of public service broadcasting or this thing where it's like, no, it's you've had enough fun with that now. You got to hand it over to this person. You know?
That is something I will say for it that gives me some optimism compared to like, because obviously I immediately thought of Star Wars and how sort of diluted that brand became under Disney, and I think part of the problem with that was there wasn't like any, because George Lucas was kind of exercised from it. There wasn't any kind of central creative figure who could have a communicate a vision. Really, it felt more like designed by committee. Whereas I think Russell is and always has been his sort of own man, and as you said, he kind of has his own ideas of like how the show should look and sound and everything like that. And I think that would be, if there's any kind of, I know he's the guy who brought it to Disney, but if there's also any bulwark against Disney like overreach, it would be Russell as well. So it's kind of a funny situation as well.
All right, I think that's a kind of nice, neat place to end there. Gave a little pocket history, and then we're talking about the future of the show, what to expect. But then it's going to be more of a traditional review show, I'd say, in the next one. But this is what we're doing. And if you like Doctor Who, then cool. Fucking stick around, why don't you? Final thoughts, James. Over to you.
I think that was good. Looking forward to the rest of the.
Okay. We should revisit like some of the political episodes as well, because I forgot we were talking about like just the broad strokes of politics. Huh? I was saying about like the politics episodes. I'd entirely forgot about Once I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, I forgot about Kill the Moon. I forgot about fucking what's the stupid one? Your man did another one about the migrant crisis.
Oh, the Zygon episodes,
brutal. But he also did one which was about like, basically it was about GDPR, but everybody kept saying, do I have your consent? Remember that?
Yeah, the pyramid at the end of the world. Yeah.
That guy is like had these kind of right-leaning reactionary episodes, and he wrote like Moffat gave them to him. You know, it's crazy. Like Moffat could be very kind of have a bit of a conservative streak in him for sure.
Yeah. I think so as well, because Peter Harness I think was that writer, and like it's funny because he wrote the most overtly political Doctor Who as well, and they would have that kind of, I'm more fond of Kill the Moon I think than most people would be, but I do understand like why people don't like that episode for sure. And like it is like very nakedly being like, I can't remember what his I can't remember exactly what his like he was probably, I think he was interviewed about it after and stuff, and I don't know if he played dumb being like, oh, there was no allegory here. I was just, but I think it wasn't intentional, like to try and I don't know, have a conversation or like was thematically trying to do something, I think, with the idea and theme of choice, but like it is, when you ground it I think in the sort of no, we have to let this creature like live and everything, it is very easy. I think it is very, very easy. The episode makes it very easy for you to read it in like a pro-life way. And same with the Zygon invasion, where it does have that feeling of, can't we all just get along? You know? And like that exasperated centrist type thing.
Yeah, and also, but like you're like, okay, I'm going to have to talk about these important issues, these things, and then it's like, okay, I think we spoke about this already. James mentioned this, but he's like, you position the migrants as literal monsters.
Monsters.
Like you're like, let's have a talk about migration. And I was like, yeah, but like a historic villain of the Doctor that is like a monster bleeding from its mouth, that is like always scheming and cunning and jumping, you know, having these plots and plans, and it's just like, yeah, it's very clunky.
Yeah, it's just I feel like with these things, like I can see the heart being in the right place, but just the execution just not landing.
I think it's his track record that makes me think his heart isn't in the right place. But I think that Moffat is looking at it and going, yeah, but that's politics, that's serious, that's heavy shit. We need this on our show. And that's a real centrist position. It's like, no, we need to have these conversations. I think send them back. Interesting. What's your take? It's like, okay, I don't want to talk to this racist. Oh, the intolerant left. You know?
That's what I was thinking about, like the Starmer response to the wearing the arm patch thing, where it's like, I disagree with what you say, but I defend your right to say it. You know, the old Voltaire thing. It's it just kind of enables a very like. It enables some interesting points of view. Like Oxygen is another political episode by what's his name? Is it?
That's not Harness,
Jamie Matheson.
Is it? Oh yeah, no, Jamie Matheson.
Where that one is overtly like political. The Doctor says like we're fighting the suits, and like is very interesting. Like the idea of oxygen as commodity and things like that. And Thin Ice is another one. That's a favorite of mine. I really like that episode.
I think it's my favorite episode.
That is like the Doctor punches a racist in that one.
I love that.
That's a banger. And like that's kind of like the good side of it, you know, where it is like, oh, if Moffat's kind of, if it is that more like centrist, like, oh, like, let's like explore different ideas and different viewpoints and stuff, like that would be the more positive side of it, for sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It would be good to revisit some of those. I think even going back to the Amazon episode, armed with some of the knowledge I have now. I've not watched Kerblam actually, so that would be actually
you for real. Oh fuck!
Yeah, I dropped out of the show, and then when I heard about Kerblam, I was like, oh, I dodged the bullet.
I'm thinking of like even like revisiting. Like, there's a novelization of Kerblam, and I'm thinking of reading it because I want to know what was in this fucker's head when he wrote that thing.
I think that's very curious as well, because it's like it could expand on things, and it could like I don't know if he'll like. I'm not saying he would ever take that criticism on board and have the Doctor say like, actually, no, the systems are the problem. But it would be very interesting to read an expanded version of it, like where maybe things are given better context and expanded upon in such a way where it can kind of be not forgiven, but kind of like at least interesting to see, like, okay, what was the rationale here, like what led to this ending up the way that it did.
All right, I think James is gone, so we'll just end it there. Oh, he's back. We'll just end it anyway. We've been talking long enough. I'll chop this into something and then we'll release it the week before. I don't know. That was all right?
It comes out. The week before is next week, isn't it?
Yes.
Then it comes out in 2 weeks, roughly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, cool. I better get off and have dinner. So I just like pause. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Join us on patreon.com/Celtic Ligers for our weekly reviews of the new series of Doctor Who in a very special mini-series. Bye.